We want to welcome everybody today for joining us in this presentation of Smart Cities Urban Air Mobility, where we're going to talk about the different elements that needed to be considered when you're talking about bringing urban air mobility, or UAM, to your cities for the benefit of that new transportation mode, as well as the economic opportunities that come from it. The webinar will be hosted by myself, Steve Philpott, CEO of MySkaut, along with my partner, who's COO, Sandra Formanton of Formanton Security, Inc. And we're gonna give this presentation for city leaders, municipal leadership, investors, community leaders, and those folks that are considering different ways of enhancing their economic opportunities for the city through urban air mobility. So what is drone assisted public safety? Well, drones, for the most part, have been around for over a decade and used by farmers and folks in agriculture to manage the large areas to spray pesticides and fertilizers over their crops, as well as monitor the perimeters of their property. And drones kind of evolved from there, moving into film and some other areas. But for the most part, all of the technologies we use today are built upon the needs and requirements of farmers, in fact. And so drones have become very useful in taking those technologies to get into small places, to eliminate the need for workers to put themselves at risk, to increase the speed at which jobs are done, which makes them very applicable for a lot of other jobs. So when you look at drones or the market in particular, you may see, well, this is a huge opportunity to do a ton of things with this technology, but there are some issues and limitations. And as a company, we've thought about those issues and limitations as it relates to the city and the residents, the regulations, and all the things that are required. So who is MySkaut? We are a Chicago-based company that is an Illinois C corporation. The company was actually, the concept for the company was actually developed by a local resident from Inglewood, Demetrius Brown, who has a background in emergency management, and further developed in an incubator funded by Blackstone Foundation, World Business Chicago, Chicago Beverage, Microsoft, and a number of other great folks. We focus on providing drone-assisted public safety. Where I said there are a number of applications, we have honed in on drone-assisted public safety and are moving or have been working on projects to bring drone-assisted public safety to Chatham in a pilot, as well as integration with NASA's urban air mobility system to provide our best practices back out to the national airspace. The way that we look at bringing smart or helping smart cities like Chicago that have infrastructure to support various innovations, we think that that infrastructure is perfect for urban air mobility. And so the approach to do this involves three prongs: a development approach, a consultative approach, and an implementation approach. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, how it relates to your city. Sandra's going to go into the development approach and give you an idea of what we're talking about there.
All right, so in terms of development approach, we need to identify the best location for use. That means we have to identify the size of the location, and we have to make sure we have clearance to fly in that corridor. So when I say we have to make sure we have clearance, I'm referring to the FAA regulations because sometimes there might be some limitations to fly close, for example, to a military base or a hospital. And then we have to make sure also that we have to take in consideration the ground and the air traffic in order to maintain the airspace and the neighborhood safe. So when it comes to MySkaut, the ideal MySkaut concept is to reduce the urban airspace into 3 square mile sectors or segments. Because in general aviation or even in traditional aviation, the airspace separation, it happens actually through the cities, regions, or even countries. So, and that's why MySkaut is reducing and breaking it down into 3 square miles segments. So when we already identified the best location for use, we proceed with installing the sensors, the public sensors. The public sensors actually can hear, feel, see, and smell. And the first application, it happens on the vertex of the segment or the sector. So we install them on the corner of the segment. It is important to train the cameras of the sensors, which means the sensor camera has to identify, recognize, and distinguish between a drone or a bird. Just imagine a computer vision as the eyes of the drone. So after the training of the camera, we proceed with the calibration. The calibration provides us information regarding georeference, which means where those sensors are specifically located, and also information about the density of the nodes needed, so which means the quantity of sensors and nodes we need. So usually we install the sensors half mile from each other, but after the calibration, it might be necessary to reduce the distance between the sensors in order to get more robust information. So after we already completed the configuration of the public sensors, it is fundamental to proceed with a 3D map. And the first step is to proceed with 3D mapping of main corridors, or reason why, mainly because most of the businesses are located on the main streets. So it is important for us to connect the 3D map to our system in order to be able to label the whole infrastructure. So we need to label each structure. So each structure has its own address. And from there, when we need to get certain information or characteristic of that specific structure, we'll find that in our system. And the system is called, of course, we're gonna get those information from a point cloud. So the 3D map is just a picture, and that's why it needs more and further integrations. So it is really important at this point that this layer provides more awareness and sense of the surrounding environment. When it comes to urban air mobility or drone assisted public safety, there are different aspects and elements that we need to take in consideration. One is the vertistop. So the vertistop is a strategic location for landing and takeoff to provide services. It is quite different from a vertiport because in the vertiport there are full aircraft services, and these full aircraft services don't happen on the vertistop. Another aspect, like in every kind of operation, also when it comes to urban air mobility and drone assisted public safety, there has to be a communication. So in the communication process, there are different actors involved, and we are talking about the operators, the community, and the first responders. When it comes to the operator, he operates or she operates in terms of PNT, which means position, navigation, and time. When it comes to the community can also be notified about the density of drones present in the neighborhood, or being alerted or notified about certain emergencies happening in the neighborhood. And finally, we have the first responders who actually play a fundamental role when it comes to communication in order to act and react to emergency circumstances. Thank you, Steve.
So where Sandra talked about this framework where we considered all the technologies, the regulations, and the things to make it work or how it would work, we also have to take a consultative approach where we're actually reaching out to get input to make this work for the communities. So as an example, in Chicago, since 2018, we've conducted Chicago Urban Air Mobility Working Groups to focus on various aspects of how this operation would work in a specific neighborhood. For example, do you believe that you would like drones in the neighborhood? That's kind of the first steps for public safety or for delivery. So we've had those conversations with residents in the community, and we've also had those conversations with first responders. We've also had those conversations with folks that are the stakeholders that will help us hire or train and hire people, help us develop new technologies to make these things better, and to provide portals so the community can both add additional information to make the system hum, as well as get information about what's going on in the system. The second thing we want to do is to work to develop command and control from our customers, who are the businesses on that corridor, their systems to our system, to be able to link that data and hand it off to first responders, excuse me, to hand off to first responders when they may arrive at an activity, and or to give our business customer the ability to say whether or not that information should be handed off to a first responder. And so you have, for example, a ton of cameras in Chicago and an increasing number of cameras in Chicago. But to make the systems more effective, we want to integrate the cameras in the physical environment, the cameras on our aerial environment with the folks that are responding. So we look at how to develop command and control. What we've done in the past is had the commander of each district, we had their cell phone numbers so we can contact them if we were flying a mission at that time and we can reach them. What we want to do is have a dynamic integration across our technologies. Also, we're looking at workforce development. UAM is expected to be a $350 billion industry within the next 7 years. And so there are workforce training opportunities. If you think of our operation, there are the opportunities to be a pilot flying a drone, a field operator where you're visually observing and assisting the drone operator, as well as an engineer, back office administrator, and other emerging areas. So we want to introduce this to our workforce and let them know that, one, there are opportunities for our operation, but the UAM market is growing, it's emerging so quickly that to be at this point in getting your interest aligned with what you want to do and what's out there could be a huge advantage in terms of career development. So finally, after we've gotten the framework designed and we've gotten the community stakeholders and the municipal leaders involved in this pilot, this framework that works for this community, we want to talk about how you scale that benefit across a city. So you take the policies and development standardization. Policies for land use, as an example. If we go into Chatham, as an example, you go into the Chatham neighborhood and you decide, hey, I want to put a vertistop here, or I want to put a vertiport here, or I want to put a delivery hub here. Well, we need some land use policies that are kind of repeatable so that if you want to do that again in another area, you're not rewriting the code, or that code doesn't conflict with the codes of different UAM areas across the city. Also, you want a data management policy that deliberately dictates who gets what data. If a drone flies overhead and captures a license plate in error, do you want that data really to be shared with the public if it's a public broadcast? Probably not. These are the types of things you want to write in. And what we looked at were the existing privacy policies that we have in place. And we kind of pinched from those to build our MySkaut internal policy, which says, hey, fly this way, don't look at any people's windows. And then we use the policy from the array of things from Argonne National Labs, which is, hey, if you capture somebody's face in a general flight, destroy that image. If you capture something personally identifiable, destroy that image. So you have these layers of information that are best practices for developing that policy, those policies, which may include land use and a number of other things, development standardization of the technologies you use for that framework, to now start stacking those pilots. So if you got 1 3-mile sector, you build another 3-mile sector, you build another 3-mile sector. And not only are you getting the standardization, but you're getting the best practice out of that business. In our case, it's drone assisted public safety. And then the implementation approach also includes connectivity with the federal regulator. So in America, it's the Federal Aviation Association, as well as NASA. So when I talked earlier about us having 2 focal points, one is drone assisted public safety that works for communities and involves communities and gives them community control. We also need to have a stream of information that flows through the FAA system and NASA system that tells the rest of general aviation, this is the activity that's going on there. And as a matter of fact, if you're going to fly through that area, here are the rules for those flights. So we've developed that integration, and our project is specific to our working through the NASA system. As well as everything else, the most important thing in my mind is that you establish those areas in your city that will be those urban air mobility destinations. So you've tried out drone assisted public safety, you've done some drone delivery, you've established this framework that says, hey, this is a possibility, and you want to take it to the next level. You want your neighborhood to be the place where someone from Schaumburg flies in on an air taxi and lands to go downtown, or you want your area to be the place where unmanned air taxis are flying a standard route. It's attracting tourists to come there, and you're building an infrastructure around that. So you want to have established relationships with those designers and systems developers, which of course we've developed. And then lastly, but to that same point, a lot of money has gone into figuring out how to make these aircraft safe, how to make them work, and how to make them lucrative in terms of the money, the revenues that these companies can generate. And they've discovered a lot of things about how to implement these in your city, as well as bringing technologies and processes that the city can share instead of building from the ground up. These are investments that a city can leverage to reduce their cost and time to market, to bring urban air mobility innovation to the neighborhood.